Today I want to talk about camera gear, but from a business perspective, not this YouTube hype thing where everybody tells you to buy the new Sony a7 Mark V that just came out, or the top 10 lenses that you should absolutely get. If from my video you learn only one thing, then please let it be this. The gear you're shooting on doesn't really matter. It won't make you the greatest photographer ever. So shoot with what you already have. But if you're at a point where upgrading actually makes sense, meaning that your current gear is limiting your paid work, then here's what I would recommend based on real work experience. This applies whether you're shooting events, weddings, corporate, automotive, or any client work. Quick intro, my name is Walters Christoskis and I've been doing professional photography for several years now. I shoot paid client work regularly and I have tried many different setups, many different camera systems, and I can tell you what works, what hasn't, because I've made some expensive mistakes and bought gear that I didn't need. But most importantly, I've learned what actually matters when photography becomes a real business. And all the advice in this video is based on my personal experience as a working professional photographer, not some spec lists, because I don't understand fucking jack shit from them. Let's start with cameras. Nowadays, there are so many different brands, so many different options that you can choose from. So instead of listing models first, I want to give you a practical checklist that you can follow to choose the best camera for you. If your camera meets these requirements, it's absolutely capable of paid work. So I'm going to split this into must-haves and nice-to-haves because not everything matters from a business standpoint. Number one thing that matters the most in your camera body is low light performance. Most paid photography happens indoors, and usually the venue isn't professionally lit, so you have to work with what you have. Good low light performance means cleaner files, more flexibility, and just a peace of mind while shooting events. This matters far more than megapixels or what brand you're shooting on. Second one is good autofocus system. People move around and some shots you can get only once. That's why you need autofocus that you can trust, especially one that works good with eyes or faces. The third one is decent megapixels. Now, why decent? Because not everybody needs 100 megapixels. There's a really small amount of people that will actually benefit from it. But a good amount of megapixels in your camera allows you to recrop in post, which is really important in some cases. Now, the fourth thing will be ergonomics. If your camera's uncomfortable, you'll definitely feel it in long shooting days. And that completely depends on you, on what type of body you like. Some examples that ergonomics affect is your speed, your fatigue, and the consistency that you provide. And they all can impact your business in a negative or positive way. Now, here are some nice to have features on your camera. Multiple SD card slots. It's not mandatory, but it's good for redundancy. There are plenty of professionals that have built careers without this feature. Sixth one is programmable feature buttons. These won't improve your image quality in any specific way, but it can definitely improve your speed and your comfortability with your camera, so also the quality you output. And the last one is silent shutter. It is very situational, but absolutely necessary in some environments. I've shot cinemas and silent concerts where this was absolutely a must-have feature, but in most cases in the jobs that you'll be shooting, it's a bonus. But really, your camera is just a box with a hole in it. And any camera can produce a semi-decent picture if you use it correctly and you have good knowledge. I started doing professional work with a Canon 2000D or a Rebel T7, I think. And that camera is nothing fancy. It has just 9 autofocus points and the ISO performance on it is horrible. I think you could go up to like 800 without having like crazy grain. And yet I made money with it, and pretty good money. I upgraded only when it became a bottleneck, not because I wanted something newer. When I started shooting darker venues and just in general more demanding events, the limitations affected my consistency and the work I was providing. So that's when it made sense upgrading. And not in a single one of those jobs a client asked me, hey, what camera are you using? They really don't care as long as you can provide good enough results. I personally shoot Sony right now, but the camera brand really doesn't matter because all of the top 3 brands have something good in them. And they constantly change over the years of which is better at what. So the top budget cameras I would recommend is a Sony a7 Mark V. It's a good all-around hybrid camera that can shoot both video and photo really well. And a good thing is that the Sony a7 Mark V just came out, and the prices might be dropping in the used market on this one. Canon R6 Mark II is also a camera I could recommend if you prefer the Canon ergonomics. And from Nikon, a camera I've heard only good reviews about is the Z6. You can show up to any job with this and be pretty sure that you'll handle everything that the client requires from you. If you want to save a decent amount of money, then I could recommend you going back 2 generations on any of the mainstream cameras. So for Sony, that would be the a7 Mark III. Buying it used is a good deal and also still performs to the same quality. Or the Canon R8, for example. These are often the best bang for your buck cameras if you can find a decent deal on them. And if you're on a stricter budget or just want to save some money, Sony 6400 and 6700 or any used full frame camera body that's semi-recent, because I can guarantee you that thousands and thousands of marketing campaigns and millions of dollars have been earned with the Canon 5D Mark II. It's such an old camera, but even today there are photographers who still make money with it. Now, if there's actually one place where spending money shows up in your work, is lenses. For paid photography, zoom lenses paid prime lenses most of the time because they give you a lot more versatility and save you a lot of time and hassle. But it really depends on what kind of photographer you are, and there are a lot of wedding photographers that prefer prime lenses. Not me personally. So rent one out and find out which type of photographer are you. Now, if you're gonna buy just one lens, then I can recommend you the 24-70 f2.8. Yes, it is pretty expensive, but this will be your bread and butter lens. The second lens I would recommend you is the 70-200, which will be your go-to for telephoto lens. It is absolutely essential if you want to get detailed shots of bigger venues with people interacting with each other, or speaker shots, close-ups of them, and wedding ceremonies, guests celebrating. And that's not even talking about sports photography or car photography. f4 will be fine for most users, but if you can afford it, then definitely get a 2.8. If you can't, then don't overthink it and get what you can. And the third option is a wide lens. You can go for a prime like a 20 or a 16mm one, or a zoom lens. So now that we have the camera and the lens covered, it's absolutely necessary for you to get a flash, because at some point you'll be at a venue where whatever you do, whatever kind of settings you set on your camera, the light won't be enough. And yeah, I know it's nothing super exciting. Getting a brand new lens or a camera body is definitely a lot more interesting than getting a flash. But flash is one of those things that is absolutely necessary, and you don't know it until you know it. For your flash, you don't need anything too complicated. The most important thing you get is TTL, which means through the lens shooting. And in most cases, unless you like complicated setups, then just one flash will be good enough. But getting just one flash and learning the manual mode, TTL, and basic bounce techniques can elevate your lighting work in dark venues 10 times, and also improve your photo quality, which will in turn improve your business. Now, another not so exciting thing are tripods. It really depends on what you're going to be shooting, but in some cases, if you want to try something with slower shutter, something more artistic, it's really good to have. Or if you're in an industry like sports photography, where carrying around a lot of big lenses and heavy gear can get tiresome, you will absolutely need a monopod. And any kind of way to set up your camera on a stable surface will just give you more options to deliver your photos when the conditions aren't completely perfect. And again, there isn't a specific tripod that you absolutely have to buy, and it's not as important if you're not doing any video. So just get anything that can hold itself and the camera, and you'll be fine. Now, the least sexy part about photography: storage, batteries, and other accessories. You definitely should get some extra batteries. They can be a third party or the main name brand battery. I personally would recommend you splurging a little bit more on the name brand batteries, because they are known to be more reliable and to have a longer lifespan overall. But either way, having at least one extra battery means less stress, fewer interruptions, and more focus on your job. And I myself, when I just bought the Sony a7 Mark IV, on my first event I was shooting, I forgot to turn off the camera. So I came up to the event with 14% left. And I was so happy that I still had my old camera in my bag, because I could shoot all of the events somehow. Another one of these maintenance things is you can never have too many of SD cards. So never cheap out on your SD card, because a good reliable SD card will be a lot cheaper than losing an important photography batch. And match the SD card to the maximum writing speed of your camera. Don't let your SD cards become the bottleneck of your camera. And at some point you're gonna run into the problem where you've shot plenty of work and you have nowhere to store it. That's when you want to look into buying an SSD. They mean faster delivery and just safer backups. None of this really improves your creativity or is super interesting, but it is an essential part of your business and it protects your income. Now, I wanted to also talk about some areas where people overspend or buy gear that they really don't need. And a good example of that is a camera bag. There are multiple YouTube channels advertising different name brand bags, and also a lot of ads online that you absolutely have to get this photography or videography specialized bag. And sometimes they cost up to the price of a decent lens, but that's really not something that you will benefit from. In fact, all over the years, I've switched many camera bodies and lenses, but my camera bag has stayed the same. And it's really simple and cheap. And just because I hate videos that talk for like 10 minutes and don't provide any actual value, I took it upon myself to give you a complete list for every major budget entry that you can have to show exactly what gear I would buy in your situation. So let's go over it, and you will also be able to download it for yourself in the description of the video and in the pinned comment. So if you have a $250 budget, there's really not much you can do. But I started with a Canon 2000D and made it a professional business, and if I could do it, then you can too. Here you'll just get the T7 or 2000D and the kit lens. Of course, it's nothing fancy and you'll absolutely struggle in low light, but for that budget, what can you ask for? It's a decent camera for the price. Then if your budget is slightly bigger and you have $500 to spare, you can upgrade the previous kit by adding a telephoto lens and a prime lens that you can use for low light scenarios. This kit is also pretty crappy, but it can get you around in like lower level jobs. Then if you have a 1K laying around, you can set something up like, as I call it, first serious gig setup. So the foundation of it all will be the Sony a6400, which you will pair it up with an 18-50 from Sigma and a Sony 55-210 for your telephoto needs. So basically with this setup, you get a lot more lenience in the low light scenario. You can push the ISO a lot higher, and you can cover anything from the range of 18 to 210 millimeters, which is more than enough for most professional work. And with that, you have some extra money for accessories, which you didn't have before. Just buy some tripod that does the job, that stabilizes the camera, and a cheap Temu or whatever, Amazon's basic bag for photography. With this side of a budget, you should allocate your funds to better equipment like lenses and camera bodies rather than your accessories. At $1,500, you can try the A7 Mark III. It will also be used, but it is at least a full frame now. And the jump from crop sensor to full frame is absolutely noticeable, and it is worth the extra $200 price tag. And that you will pair up with the 28-75 from Tamron. And at this budget, a Tamron will work well for you because the glass is pretty good for the price. And to pair it up with a zoom lens, I would recommend buying some kind of prime lens that is a little bit longer. For the leftover amount of money, the best one was the 85mm one because it's almost the cheapest one. But if you can get a longer one on a tighter budget, then that also works for you if you get a good deal on it. Now at $2,000 range, we're getting into the more serious setup. You can still have the A7 Mark III as your main body, but add a good telephoto zoom lens, for which a good option for the $500-600 budget that we have left over is the Tamron 70-180. And then for accessories, as you still don't have too much play money, I would rather invest the money in better glass than better camera bags. For $3,000, this is the first section. We will get upgrades in our accessories, but let's talk about the main parts of your photography first. Your main workhorse will be the Sony a7 Mark IV, which I also use. It has served me pretty well for these several years now. And for the price right now, this is a perfect deal because you can buy it used for 1.7K, around that mark, because the A7 Mark V just came out, so the prices are dropping on this one and will keep dropping. And then you just pair it up with three lenses: your wide, your regular range, and your telephoto zoom lens. Now for the wide zoom lens, I chose a 16-35 from Sony f4. Why f4? Because you won't need the 2.8 when you're shooting wide shots. You want to get more in focus than a 2.8 will allow you. Now an alternate thing you can do is choose a different wide zoom lens, like a wide prime lens for like $150, and for the standard zoom you can upgrade to a 24-70 f2.8 from Sigma. So basically you would flip these budgets around. And for telephoto, the 55-210 will be good enough. It's not a fixed aperture lens, but I mean, you can get most of the shots that you want. Again, you can get just a fast prime lens, or for the wide zoom lens, choose a fast prime and then upgrade, allocate your budget more to the standard zoom range and the telephoto range. And when you're carrying around $3,000 in your bag, then you want something sturdy, so don't cheap out at this price point anymore. Now for the $5,000 setup, you can get most of the cool things now. We will choose a Sony a7 Mark V, which right now is pretty much the best hybrid that you can get for your money. We will pair it up with a wide zoom lens that is Tamron 17-28, then a 28-75 f2.8 with the second generation, and the basic telephoto at the 70-180, which is also a good telephoto lens that a lot of professionals still use to this day. Of course, you would want to go for the G Master lenses, but then our budget would be nearer to 10,000. Here for the accessories, I allocated a bigger amount of budget. But again, choose your priorities. If you align with the thoughts that I had in this video, then you can allocate more of this budget towards your zoom, which would be smarter. I would much rather add this amount of money to the standard zoom lens and buy a decent 24-70 brand new than having a $400 carbon tripod, for example. So really choose what you need, but the difference between this lens and a 24-70 from Sigma will be not so impactful. It will be like this lens does 80% of the job that Sigma does. And for this last section of main takeaways and key points, I will leave it up to you if you want to read it. So if you do want to read it, then go to the link in the description and you can access this whole thing for free. I know, big deal. So what am I trying to say with this? Spend your money where you can make money. If it makes your craft better, improves your business, or makes your life that much easier, only then it makes sense to spend money. You have to think like a business and not as just a creative.